Hello and welcome back to the Radical Podcast for another episode of Radical Ideas intended to transform the way that we look at each other, society, our institutions, basically everything we do. So today I want to talk about some of the basic principles behind the ideas of Zen, behind the ideas of Tao, how they connect with the fundamental absence of free will in our universe, and how it can make your life a lot easier. I'm not a self-help guru, incidentally. That's not what I'm out here to do. I just want to start a conversation about radical ideas that can make the world better. Get the conversation starting between you and your friends and you and me and your community and your neighbors and just everyone. Want, the dinner table or sitting around Netflix or whatever to produce conversations about important things and about things that can really change things. Really make all of our lives better. But I'm not a self-help guru. But the principles behind Tao and Zen are pretty solid. There are a lot of texts you'll read, analyses or whatever that seek to overcomplicate or to ritualize or to create some sort of fundamentalism around it or dogma. But it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anyways in the original teachings anywhere. And it certainly doesn't exist in anyone who gets it. Both of them are the basis of them is antithetical or absolutely contrary to institutions or to ritual or to things of that nature. Taoist Tai Chi might be an example, but Taoist Tai Chi is a ritual that is, if you don't do it, doesn't mean you're not a Taoist, right? It just means that you're not participating in this particular activity, which, any Taoist will look at and go, well, that's okay. You're just going with your flow. And incidentally, the word Tao roughly translates to flow or the way or the path. The title of the original text, Tao Te Ching, is Tao is the way, De is the virtue, so it's the way and the virtue. And in any case, the principle behind it is excellent in that it is observational, it's objective, it's logical. This is the product of ancient Chinese scholars and philosophers who were looking at the world as it is, deconstructing the cultural notions about what the world is. Because 2,000, 3,000 years ago, China still had a vast civilization that was much more advanced than anything in the Western world. It was feudal, of course. It was not unified, but it was advanced, and they had advanced philosophy, and they had sciences. So they came across gunfire, fireworks, things like that, so far ahead of the rest of the world, and along with a lot of other principles. In any case, is a logical belief system, in my view, because it basically looks at the way that the world works and sees that there's a flow to it, that everything has its place, that people are much like water, which makes sense because we are mostly water. But we're much like water in that you yourself hold your form because much like a whirlpool holds its form. You've got stuff coming in, you've got stuff going out, it's all moving around, and the movement of it is what gives it form. So it's all about flow. Things flow through you to make you. Things flow through me to make me. And in fact, if you really look at it, everything flows through you to make you, and everything flows through me to make me, and that makes both of us everything. And all of us everything. So this is a principle that the Taoists really got, and they also understood that the time is just a concept. They understood that the now is all that there is. Everything happens now. Even if you look at it from a neurological perspective, modern science, contemporary thinking, anything that's happening to you, anything you're experiencing, everything you're experiencing, only happens right now. And it is the change in the now, from the now that was previous to the now that is now, that produces life. Is that flow from now to now to now to now to now. But they understood not to take the idea of time too seriously. They understood not to take fundamentalism and ritualism seriously. Because life doesn't work that way. Those are just ideas. They're just concepts that we've created. So one of the basic principles, if you want to boil it down, of Taoism is that forcing things to happen produces an adverse result. Whether you're trying to think, or whether you're struggling and trying to move a log, whether you're struggling and trying to get over depression or anxiety or so on and so forth, struggling and trying actually interfere with accomplishing something. That's one of the principles of Taoism that you'll find you really have to read into it, and you really have to take what they're saying, because it's all spoken in, I'm not going to say riddles. To me it's perfectly clear, and I think it's perfectly clear to a lot of you, but they speak in prose, in poetry. The idea behind it is that what they're saying is just a pointer, a guide in the right direction, because what they're really trying to express, the unity of everything, the unity in the present moment of everything coming together at a focal point, and how to work with that, how to work with the world as it is. All of these things, you could write tomes, massive dissertations on these things, but that defeats the purpose. It becomes over-intellectualized. It makes it inaccessible to you and I. But providing symbols is accessible to anyone. So, why am I bringing this up? I said that I was going to talk about Zen and Tao, a little bit about free will, and about doing without trying. That's what I'm trying to get to here. Doing without trying. Now, this is the part that sounds a little bit like self-help, blah, blah, blah. So I want to make it clear that I'm not suggesting that life is all of a sudden roses for any reason ever. Life is not just going to become free of tragedy, free of loss, free of attachment, free of ego, because you understand a few basic principles. In fact, that would defeat the point of life. The point of life is experience. To be here, to see from all these perspectives. And unfortunately, tragedy is a perspective. It's one of the ones that needs to be experienced. We need to experience pain and loss to learn. To learn as a culture, as a society. If we never experience pain, if we never experienced loss, if we didn't experience attachment, why would it matter if someone got sick or hurt? Why would we rescue one another? Why would we work with one another? Why would we cooperate? Why wouldn't we just kill everyone else and just live off the land ourselves with everything we want? It's because we have empathy. That's why war is hell. You know, people go to war, and other people imagine that they're there and they're fighting, and they're just merciless killing machines, because that's what they're supposed to do. That's their duty. It's not true. It's hard to kill people. I've never killed anyone. I'm proud of that. But I've spoken to many people who have, and no one wants to kill anyone. You do it because you're scared for the lives of your friends. Maybe you're scared for the lives of your countrymen. In any case, you're doing it because you love people and you're scared for them. Most often, it's the people who are right next to you in that moment, your buddies, the people you depend on. Even if you don't particularly like them, you know them, they're familiar to you, they're part of your tribe. But I digress. The point that I wanted to make is that life is not just going to be easy, but that doesn't mean you need to struggle either. Struggling is not only unnecessary, struggling is unproductive. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't get you anywhere. We struggle because we're taught that struggling is what you have to do. That you got to battle your internal demons. That if you're not struggling, then you don't deserve what comes out at the end. So we struggle largely because we believe, for some reason, that it's going to help us. There's a lot of tricks that our ego plays on us, too, that make us struggle way more than we have to. But I want you to think of a few basic examples of trying and of accomplishing something. It can be as simple as, for those of you who are sports inclined, baseball, football, whatever, snowboarding. When you first start out, you're thinking all the time, and you're struggling to think and remember. You're struggling to remember what to do. These are very physical, tactile, responsive moments, events, activities. And there's these techniques that you need to get, you need to understand, and every time you try, you struggle, and then after you practice for a while, after you condition your neural pathways to respond the right way to the right feedback from your environment and from your body, then it starts to get easier. So at that moment that I think a lot of you know, and it could be snowboarding, it could be playing baseball, it could be playing a musical instrument, it's when it starts to click. And what is the brilliance of that moment? What is the joy, the elation of that moment? The elation of that moment is that you're not thinking. You're allowing the conditioning, the programming, the encoding to do it for you, to respond. Because now your pathways have adjusted because you repeated it so many times. Now they know what to do when they see the particular music note on the sheet coming up. They know what to do when they see a rest, when the conductor raises the baton. Your internal processing is doing it all without you trying to. That's the beauty of it. And what happens when you get that moment of self-doubt, or something happens that you weren't conditioned for? Oh, you start thinking, oh my God, what's happening? What do I do? What do I do? And that is where you mess up. When you start thinking. Thinking is an interference. When it's happening during something requiring focus. And it is the very act of trying in these moments. And you can see it in people who are accomplished. People, craftsmen, tradespeople, athletes. You can see when their emotions take over. When there's ego playing at them. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You don't deserve this. What about that thing that your wife said to you at home before you left the house? What about those bills? Oh my God, you didn't pay those bills. What are you doing? And they get flustered. And even though they're so well conditioned, even though it's built into their brains, literally, it's built into their muscles, literally, chemically, even though they forget how to do it in that moment. Why? Because they're thinking. And because they're getting upset. And they're struggling. Struggling doesn't help. If you find yourself struggling, it's because you're trying to move an immovable object. This is why I say that this can make your life a lot easier. It doesn't remove the problems. But when you catch yourself struggling, what you do, whether it's trying to do the math, balancing the family budget, whether you're trying to cram for an exam in school, whether you're finding yourself debating on Twitter with people who are absolutely resistant to logic because their egos are inflated at the moment, or their egos are feeling threatened. You're struggling. You're pushing against an immovable object. You know, when you're trying to cram, you're trying to remember things, and you're tired. You're struggling. And it doesn't help you. It slows you down. It makes you less responsive. Because in struggling, you are taken out of the present moment. Because all the struggling is happening in your mind. It's all thoughts, and those thoughts are happening right now. But your focus is not on your environment, what is happening to your body in that moment, what is happening to your mind in that moment, what information is being brought in. You're not being a good observer. That's what you're here for. You're here to observe. You're here to witness, not to resist. Not to resist what is right now. Take it in. Take a breath. Take a breath and go do something else. If you find yourself struggling, go do something else. Go for a walk. Watch your favorite TV show. Do anything. Read a book. Something else. Allow your brain to do something else and be somewhere else other than slamming against a brick wall. Because, you see, the reason I brought up Tao, and why I will bring up Zen in a moment, is that the principle of water is to find the path of least resistance. If you're at a brick wall, try to find a way around. Don't keep slamming into it. Go with the flow. If you're feeling resistance, you're doing the wrong thing. If you're trying to hammer in a screw, you're going to feel an awful lot of resistance. If you persist, you will struggle. And you will continue to struggle, and you will never accomplish what you're trying to accomplish because you are working against how things work and how things are. And it's working against how things work and how things are that produces problems. That's what produces struggling. I'm not going to say, once again, the problems go away with this, but it makes you able to deal with the problems better. When you recognize that the answer is not to sit there wringing your hands, screaming or sweating or shaking. The answer is to take a good look at what is happening. Try to understand where you are, what you're doing, because we get so caught up in the thoughts, the ideas, the symbols about what is happening that our mind produces. And it doesn't do this to hurt doesn't do this to help. It does it because it's what the mind does. The mind produces symbolic abstractions that are based on what it is processing. But it's not what it is processing. It is an abstraction, an idea that allows us to extract information and to communicate. That's what thoughts are. They're not good and they're not bad. But they're a tool, and if we don't use them properly, if we allow them to use us or to drive us, if we believe them literally, then we're not using them. We're hammering in a screw. Instead of screwing in a screw, we're hammering in a nail. We're working against ourselves. It's important to remember that thinking is a product of the interplay between your neural structures, that is, how they have been conditioned to respond over the course of your life, your genetics, which contain the potential to respond to environmental stimuli, and the environment itself. And the environment itself is everything that you're experiencing. Everything that's coming in through your mind, the feeling of the air, the feeling of gravity forcing itself on your spine and on your muscles. What someone is saying to you. A horn honking in the distance. All of these things are things that your mind is processing all the time. It's taking them in. And the purpose of the thought is much like your computer. Your computer is processing information all the time. That information looks like either electrical gaps, electrical sparks, electrical current, or ones and zeros, depending on how you want to picture it. That is the information that's actually going through the computer. That's what it is. But unless you've spent years and years and years learning how to read computer code, binary code, as fast as a computer can, which is basically impossible, you need the computer to produce symbolic abstraction of the information so that you can get the information to your brain, to you, so you can share it with others. That symbolic abstraction is your graphical user interface, your desktop, Windows, Apple, your icons, the pictures that you use to access your programs and access your information. That's a symbolic abstraction in much the same way as the images and the thoughts and the sounds that happen in your brain. But if we mistake the icon on the desktop for the program itself, for the information itself, then we don't know what it actually is. We don't know what we're actually looking at. We have an idea of what it's trying to convey to us, but we're not getting the full picture. Now, I'm not suggesting you all become neurologists and learn to read your own CT scans and MRIs and encephalograms. What I'm saying is recognize that your thoughts are a source of information. Your memories as well. They're a source of information. But they're happening now. They didn't happen then. That means that the thought that you're having now, the memory that you're remembering right now, is based on what is happening right now. It's going to include bits and pieces of that. It won't be actually what happened in that moment 10 years ago. It'll be how you remember it now based on everything you've seen and done and what you're experiencing and seeing and doing right now. So that's why we shouldn't take our thoughts too literally, and that's why thoughts can interfere so much with what we're trying to do. If you think about driving, for example, driving is almost a pure fusion of human and machine, in that when your hands are on the wheel and your feet are on the pedals, your hand is on the gear shift, You are using the car like an extension of your body in a very real way. It is very much your muscles move in response to what you see out your window. And immediately the car responds because you are actually physically connected to the car through the pedals and through the wheel and through the gear shift. What you do has an immediate response because there is no transmission time. So when you're driving, it's much like walking. You don't think about the process you use when you walk. And if you start thinking about moving each muscle correctly in order to walk, you are going to trip and fall. I don't care who you are, because you can't do it that way. Thinking gets in the middle of what you're doing. Absorbing information is not thinking. Taking in information is not thinking, and practicing is not thinking. It's all repetition. Those are the processes that allow your neural pathways, and there's a thing called neuroplasticity that means that your brain, the structure of it, adapts in response to your environment. This is why I said that there was going to be a little bit about the absence of free will here, and that's because if that's the case, if our environment is changing the structure of our brains, of our minds, of our thoughts, of who we define ourselves as, then we are not the masters of ourselves. At least, not of this experience, which is not a bad or a good thing. It just simply is how it is. Thinking is futile because it interrupts the connection between you and everything. The connection between you and everything is your sensory organs. The ones we know about and the ones that we may not have discovered yet. That is your connection to source, to life, to the universe, to everything that's acting on you all the time, which is everything. And when we practice, when we repeat, when we do tasks over and over, we allow our mind to shift in accordance with the environmental stimuli and with the repetition. And we allow it to configure itself in such a way that when you put it back in that environment, or when you put it back in that situation, it will respond the same way the next time. It will know what to do automatically. It will be programmed. The more we think, the more we question, the more we interact with this process, the more we interfere with it happening properly. Allowing things to happen, allowing thoughts to happen. Don't take thoughts personally. That's another thing that causes the interference. You have a thought, for example, you see a lady crossing the road, and a weird little thought in your head goes, let's run her down. It's not really you. It's based on a joke you saw on a TV show 5 years ago. It's based on something that a friend said in passing 2 years ago. You didn't do that. You didn't create your thoughts. Your thoughts are an event that happens to you. But if you start bashing on yourself or feeling insecure, like, why did I think that? Well, I didn't mean to think that. That's just more thinking that you didn't intend to do, but you're responding to your thinking as though it's you, because, once again, you're conditioned to. By listening to me and by believing what I'm saying, not that you should believe it without question, do your own research, but by taking this sort of information, this idea, and this perspective into account, you can disrupt that conditioning. And you can create new conditioning, which allows you to respond to thoughts as, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what provoked that. That's it for the Radical Podcast today, because we're almost out of time. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me your feedback, and I will be back later with another episode, a topic yet to be determined. Radically yours, I'm Ryan McKenna. Do not try. That's my bad Yoda impression. Have a good day.